I had a question come up on our WhatsApp expats group for Nicaragua today, and if you are not a member of that, get down in our show notes and check out the link. It's a great place to join and have a lot of real-time conversation with a lot of people. It's completely free, and it is not moderated by any commercial interest, so it's a great place to get some real feedback on things and not be sold anything. Not that other places aren't good for that, but there's some you have to be careful of, and it's not always clear to know which ones are which, so definitely check that out. But the question came up today: how does the Nicaraguan Cordoba, our local currency here, maintain its incredibly stable relationship with the US dollar? A lot of places that have a relatively locked currency still vary pretty wildly over time, but the Cordoba does not. It is very close. So how does it do this, and how do we compare it to some other currencies that try to do the same thing? What's different there? We're going to discuss that right after the bump. So, to give you an idea of what's going on with the Nicaraguan Cordoba, it currently trades at roughly 36.4 Cordoba to the US dollar. And regardless of whether the US dollar goes up or down over time, at least if it doesn't go up dramatically, over time, the Cordoba remains trading at the same value. And by same, we do allow for a small amount of fluctuation, maybe 1% at the most. So trading 36.4, maybe it goes up to 36.5 or drops to 36.3 over a period of a couple days, but generally floats right back to the 36.4 number. And over time, this will change. There are predictable times that will not remain the same. It is not forever the same number, but on any given day, it is incredibly stable and predictable, and you really don't have to worry about it changing. This allows for a lot of really important financial decisions and planning here in Nicaragua, that we know that we're able to use the Cordoba and not have to worry about it inflating, at least compared to the US dollar. We also have the benefit that because they are essentially locked together with a hard lock, they're not, but because they're essentially behave in that way, we can use dollars and Cordoba interchangeably within the country and move back and forth anytime for any transaction without it having any ill effect. Now, there are some rules because Nicaragua does need to maintain a little bit of sovereignty and a little bit of oversight to things. So you must report transactions here in country in Cordoba. You must pay your taxes in Cordoba and so forth. But you can do those transactions in any currency you like. Euros, Asian currencies, Argentinian pesos. It doesn't matter. You can do any currency you want. The US dollar does have an official status, although it is not an official currency of the country. It does have an official status within the country. And so it's widely available. Every ATM is going to dispense them. Nearly every business will accept either one. They'll give you your bill in Cordoba, but you can pay that bill in dollars, not a problem. And everyone knows the exchange rate. Everyone calculates on the same exchange rate and so forth. So you really can go back and forth without any problems at all. And that's unique-ish. It's not the only country in the world where this happens, but it's very uncommon that you can do this with a powerful third national currency. So this is really interesting, and this leads to the question, how do they do this? Now, Panama and Ecuador are able to do this. Ecuador, by simply using the US dollar, well, of course it's going to stay stable. It is the US dollar. And Panama has a deal with the United States where they use the Balboa, but the Balboa is the US dollar, and it is interchangeable. So there's a little bit of complexity there, but they actually use a locked currency to the US dollar. But the Cordoba isn't quite. It has a soft lock, and it is maintained differently, and it is not one-to-one. So how do they do it? So two ways. One, the rate of exchange is set by the Nicaraguan government. But as people know, if you just set a rate, people are going to trade at what it's actually worth somewhere. Maybe not in a government institution, but you'll go out on the street or go outside the country and trade at a different rate if the rate is not legitimate. But here, the rate is legitimate. This is the trick. Nicaragua is not just making up an exchange rate. They're actually telling you what the exchange rate should be and doing whatever is necessary to make it come true. And this is what's really interesting about the Nicaraguan Cordoba story. Nicaragua's central bank has enough financial power and economic wherewithal to be able to manipulate the currency in such a way as to maintain stability within that limited range of being stable vis-a-vis the US dollar, right? They can't maintain stability of the US dollar. The US dollar will remain volatile, and the Cordoba is going to ride that boat along with it, right? But it is able to maintain stability against the dollar, which alone is a massive feat. So this is really impressive. But this is what people miss, because the assumption, and someone said this in the group immediately, boy, I would expect a black market to pop up. But the question is, why? They're completely legal. You can set up a black market and trade, even here in country, the Cordoba at any rate that you want. But you wouldn't, because it makes no sense, because the money isn't worth that. Black markets work because there's a inability to get an official exchange rate that is correct, and so you go to a black market where you get something closer to correct, and you go underground to get it, because they have to go underground and keep it secret, because you're not allowed to trade at the correct or near correct value. This is what happened in Argentina recently. When we were there last September, we had to go on the black market to get something close to the actual exchange rate of the US dollar to the Argentinian peso, because the official government rates were wildly inaccurate by massive amounts, right? 30–40% in some cases. So you would get really a huge loss in your exchange should you go to a bank, for example, who has to use the government exchange number. So black markets are obvious in those situations, but here in Nicaragua, that is the real exchange rate, 36.4, or within that tiny margin that we mentioned. So having a black market would be insane. Whoever was running that black market and giving you a different rate, you could exploit that rate by exchanging with them for whatever they were doing wrong, go to anywhere else, a bank, the government, exchangers on the street, any random business, change the money, come back and keep doing it, and simply taking the black market's money away. So a black market's not going to do that, because they would just lose money. If they're not losing money, then no one would go to them, because no one's going to just throw money away and get less, right? Black markets only work when there is an unfavorable false number forced on the market. Since that doesn't exist, there is no possibility of a logical black market arising. So this is what people don't understand, is that the Cordoba truly is worth what it is stated at. Now, how do they do this? Well, by pulling money off the market when they need to, putting more on the market when they need to, having a creeping peg over time, and a lot of other mechanisms, including holding large amounts of foreign currencies and such, and being able to let those go or buy more as needed to stabilize the currency. There are standard mechanisms, and this is a small country with a small economy, so they don't have to worry about, for the most part, having such an impact on the world market that it destabilizes other countries, which in turn creates a cascade effect. They don't have that problem. They're able to buy and sell in numbers that don't really impact the large market, which makes it relatively straightforward, as long as you have the power to do so, to manipulate your currency to maintain stability. And lots of countries want to do this, but lack either the power or the knowledge on how to do so. A comparison that gets drawn in this region is the Belizean dollar. Now, it has the confusing term dollar in it, but don't let that confuse you. It's a local currency and is no way a part of the dollar system. However, inside Belize, this is key. When we're talking about the Nicaraguan Cordoba, we never say it trades for something inside the country and something else outside the country. Its rate of exchange is global. When we're talking about the Belizean dollar, it has a very clear inside the country exchange rate of 2 Belizean dollars for every US dollar. Sort of. We're going to answer that in a second. But outside of the country, it does not have that exchange rate, and you can get quite a few more Belizean dollars for every US dollar. Not 4, but easily 3. And that's a wildly different number when you're looking at exchanging any real amount of money. That's really significant. And before someone says, but you get twice as much, that is not how it works. That is complete misunderstanding of currency. The 2 Belizean dollar is meant to be 1 US dollar. Everything is double the price. They don't get confused and give you a beer for $2 in the US and $2 in Belize, and you go, woo, but I got twice as much. And no, they're not stupid. It costs $4 and $2. 2 US dollars and 4 Belizean dollars. That's how it works. You get no benefit by having more money, except that the unit is smaller. So every Belizean dollar is like carrying around a Kennedy half dollar, but you don't have to have a coin, it's paper. That's it, right? Don't ever think that the large number of currency makes things cheaper. That is never how it works. That is absolute bizarro confusion. I do not understand how that happens. That's like thinking that your food is heavier because you weighed it in grams rather than in pounds, just because the numerical value is bigger. But if you're weighing the same plate, you know the food didn't change. It's amazing how confused people get as soon as you start mentioning currency. Okay, so the reason that the Belizean dollar is not actually exchanging for 2 to 1 inside the country is for a very important reason, and that is that you can only do it one direction. So it's not a full exchange. You can buy Belizean dollars completely accurately and forever. As long as you give American currency, they will give you double that numerical value in Belizean dollars all day, all night. You bring in $10, you bring in $1,000, you bring in $100 million, and they will give you that Belizean currency at double the value. 100 million American dollars will give you 200 million Belizean dollars, absolutely guaranteed. And the exchange rate will always be exactly 2 to 1. You can do this forever. But there is a catch. As soon as you want to return those Belizean dollars and get American dollars in return, you have to get special permission from the government in order to do this, and under normal circumstances, you simply can't. This is a one-way transaction, so we can't actually make the argument that you are getting a 2 to 1 exchange rate. You're able to buy Belizean dollars, but you're not getting a true exchange in any sense whatsoever. So it's a misleading way to look at it. It's not a reversible exchange. In Nicaragua, you can buy Cordoba and sell it for US dollars, and other than paying some overhead for the transaction, you're going to get and receive and give and get back the exact same amounts time after time. You could go back and forth all day, and as long as you're not paying a transaction fee, you'll never lose a penny. That's important. But with Belize, you do it once and that's it. If you want to get US dollars for those Belizean dollars, you have to somehow take those Belizean dollars physically out of the country, find someone who wants to buy them, and sell them for whatever they're willing to give you for them, which is generally 3 or 4 to the US dollar, definitely never 2. Outside of Belize, no one will ever give you 2 to the dollar because there's not their value in any way, shape, or form. So this process brings up, ooh, and we just got some thunder, so that rain may be coming, even though I said it looked like a clear sky. I don't know what the weather is doing, okay? Don't blame me. Okay, so this may bring up some problems that you're probably not thinking about. The first is, well, Scott, doesn't that mean that people are buying Belizean dollars, but no one's ever selling them? Basically, more money is going into the Belizean economy from the outside every time someone visits the country and exchanges US dollars or anything else for Belizean dollars. And you're absolutely correct. That means Belize is simply gaining foreign funds without having to spend anything because they're simply printing their own money. And this is an interesting way for the country to keep making money because it's a tourism-based economy. They don't need money to flow out of the country for the most part. They do a little bit. We're going to talk about that in a second. But you could imagine doing this on a private scale if you had the kind of control that a sovereign nation does, or Belize, being part of the Commonwealth, will act much like a sovereign nation. It is technically under the crown. So Belize is able to forcibly not allow people to spend anything but Belize dollars within their borders. Imagine if you had a small village somewhere in the United States. Well, let's try a different tact. Let's imagine that you have a Disney World. When people are going to Disney World, Disney does not allow anything to be spent inside Disney World except for Disney dollars. They make their own thing, and they could do 2 Disney dollars for every US dollar and then simply double all their prices compared to what they are now, and it all works exactly the same, except for one little trick. When you come in, you're buying those dollars ahead of time. You have to purchase them. Now, you may not have to purchase everything for your entire stay at Disney World, but you have to buy enough for the day or whatever. You go to an ATM, you take out your Disney dollars, and so forth. So they sell you those dollars. At the end of your day or at the end of your trip, you're left with some amount of Disney dollars that you weren't able to spend. This may be a huge number or just 1 or 2, but you're never going to be exact reasonably. Now, you can take those home with you, and maybe when you come back to Disney World sometime in the future, you can spend them. That's absolutely fine. You can give them to someone who plans on coming down. You can, try to sell them to someone, but no, why would anyone give you the full value that you paid for them to buy them off of you? They know that you're desperate to sell them. They'll give you something, but they'll give you less. It's the only thing that makes sense, unless someone's just doing you a favor. But in no case is someone going to give you a better rate. That would make no sense at all, because they can always go to Disney World and buy more. Over time, on its own, this isn't enough to account for the entire economy of Disney World, but it is enough to grow the economy of Disney World, because the money that goes into Disney dollars never leaves. They don't have to use it for anything. Now, that's not completely true. Now, of course, Disney needs to go out and buy food supplies from farms. They need to pay workers and so forth. So some of that money is going to leave. But by having this transaction, they're guaranteeing that the money comes in more than it goes out simply through this exchange rate. Now, if they also controlled and said, well, we're only going to pay our workers in Disney dollars, dollars, you can see how that would get a lot more powerful really quickly. Suddenly they're paying something that they can just print more of. They don't have to have gotten it from the outside world, but they have money coming in from the outside world indefinitely to cover it. So it's a really interesting thing. Now, when you do it on a Disney World scale, it is weird and it's hard to really understand how it can be super powerful. But when you start doing it on a city scale or a small country scale, it becomes insanely powerful, but it does present some problems. For example, there are things that are not made inside Belize. In fact, it's a tiny country, so very little is made inside Belize. So they need to use US dollars to buy those things from the outside world. Now, many of those things are purchased by the government, of course. Things like materials for making roads or equipment for making roads, just as examples. And so those things are going to be purchased using US or other dollars or other currencies that they have accumulated, and they can pay cash for them and purchase them that way. But you will notice that individual people have no access to US dollars. Remember, if you live in Belize, you can only be paid in Belizean dollars. You can only have Belizean dollars. You can't have American dollar bank accounts under normal circumstances. Anything involving something that isn't a Belizean dollar, you have to have special permission to use, not just hold. Now, if you just have some cash and put it in your pocket, you're fine. But if you want to use a bank, you want to do a transfer, anything like that, you want to get a credit card, you can get it from a bank foreign, but you need to convince a bank in a foreign country to give you a credit card. Relatively hard to do. You can get an account in the US, but difficult and cumbersome. So if you want to, for example, something that we do all the time here in Nicaragua, and we're going to do videos about this again because we want to get this idea, because many people have missed some of the value here. But let's say we want to order things from the United States as something we do all the time here in Nicaragua. We can simply pay using US dollars to an Amazon or Walmart or any number of places and have things shipped into Nicaragua. It's super simple to get products from the outside world because we have unlimited free access to US dollars anytime, anywhere. Not only are we allowed to do anything we want with US dollars, we have US dollar based bank accounts and ATM withdrawals here in the country. It's completely open. So we don't have to worry about limitations on US dollars. So our ability to do business internationally, our ability to purchase and do retail shopping internationally is maximized. But for Belizeans, if they want to so much as order a new camera off of Amazon, not only is that camera company need to be paid in US dollars or something else recognized internationally, they also need to pay for the Amazon shipment to come in US dollars or some other currency recognized internationally. Generally, you can pay in Chinese yuan, you can pay in European euros, British pounds. There's a few other things that are broadly recognized as international currencies. But lots of small countries, Nicaragua, Belize, and so forth, their currencies are only viable inside their own countries. So even while Nicaragua's currency is very stable and you can exchange it easily around the world, no one will accept it unless they're just really confident that they can exchange it easily. And generally, they're going to be like, you go exchange it and give me something useful back, right? They're going to put that onus on you. But you can do that. But if you have Belizean dollars, you'll struggle to be able to do that. That's the difference. But in all the cases, these small countries with localized currencies, you can't really use them abroad directly, which is fine. Not a problem at all. So in this case, if you're Belizean, it means you do not have access without special government permission to be able to purchase anything from the outside. So if a computer inside the country has a really high price tag, they don't necessarily have to tariff that. They can simply block you from purchasing outside, and you must pay whatever price there is or do without those products. Or if you want to travel internationally, too bad. You're not able to pay for flights, pay for your hotel in the place you're going, or use money that you've earned in Belize outside of the country unless the government gives you access to something. Now, if you have a funding source from outside the country, you have money from family and it's kept outside the country, you're fine. Just access that when you get out. But as a normal Belizean, if you don't have any contacts, the government does actually control your ability to leave the country by limiting your access to a currency that you can use to pay for fuel, a taxi, a bus, anything. You don't have access to an international currency, something that we don't think about as North Americans, because even the Canadian dollar, while far less powerful and flexible and easily used than the US dollar, is widely accepted internationally if push comes to shove. If you absolutely needed to get on a bus and go somewhere, you could use Canadian dollars and someone would give you a reasonable exchange rate to do so. But with Belizean dollars, you face the possibility that no one will accept them at all, or people will take it at half their value, right? And sometimes not even that. So it is a completely different thing. The Belizean people are completely economically controlled, financially controlled on an individual basis by their central bank. The central bank determines individual, person by person, their ability, their right to purchase products from the outside world, to access things on the outside world. And so you can work your whole life. Now, this is unlikely, right? If you have lots of resources, generally when you're rich, you can do anything, no matter what other limitations you have. But you could, in theory, accumulate millions of Belizean dollars. You could be super rich. You could buy houses, have all kinds of things in Belize. You could own hotel chains. This is extreme. I'm sure this has never happened. But you could do all these things and then say, you know, I'd really like to visit Guatemala. I want to go to the neighboring country and just experience Latin culture and hear people speaking in Spanish on every corner. I want to go to Guatemala City and see the opera. And the government can just go, you know, we're not going to allow you to change any of your millions of dollars into quetzales in Guatemala. Sorry, good luck. You can walk across the border and beg, but that's all you can do. Your money can't leave the country. So most of us are used to currencies that are so fluid that the idea that we can't take our money with us when we leave the country never really occurs to us. So it does occur to us that it could be cumbersome, slow, problematic in different ways. But when people are looking at moving to Nicaragua, we never think, oh, all my money's in the US, it'll never be able to come to Nicaragua. No, we just assume we can bring it with us because we can. And if you make your money in Nicaragua and you're moving to the US, we never say, oh no, I have to leave all my money behind and start over in the US. No, you get to take it with you. Both countries let you move back and forth, just like nearly every country. But Belize doesn't, or it does, but you have to have individual specific permission. You have to petition the central bank and ask for the right and the amount of money that you want. And if it's too much, they'll just say no. Or if they don't like the purpose that you're doing it for, they will say no. So there's a lot of control that happens simply because money you've earned isn't truly yours, unless you're simply using it inside a country of only 480,000 people. So when you think about that, if you're like from Texas, that's not like being able to use it within Austin city limits. That's like being able to use it within a 10-block area within Austin. 480,000 people is an incredibly small number of people. Even my hometown of Rochester, New York, its metro area is 1.1 million. So this is quite a bit under half the area of Rochester, New York, or Buffalo, New York. This is only a little bit bigger than Utica or Binghamton, New York, or Youngstown, Ohio, right? Those are similar areas in population to Belize. So when you're saying you're limited to only being able to spend it within that zone, it's only a few hundred restaurants. It's probably more than that, but that's it. It's only this tiny selection of restaurants, this tiny selection of hotels, this tiny selection of shops. There's very, very little because it's a tiny place. If you were to say the same thing in the US or China, you're like, okay, I understand it's limited to a single country, but these are giant countries. You can spend a lifetime and never see everything, no matter how much money you have. But in Belize, you can easily go everywhere and do everything it would still take a while, but you could do so if you have those kinds of resources. So it's a really interesting thing to look at, how these currencies maintain their exchange rates, and why when people are thinking about the Cordoba, they're assuming that it must be like the Belizean dollar or like the Argentinian peso and must have a black market where it would be traded, and maybe a black market where you have to get it. How can you get from Belizean dollars into US dollars? Only through a black market or an external market. You cannot exchange them back when you leave Belize. So if you are a tourist and you go to Belize, whatever money you get into Belizean dollars, you're leaving that behind. Maybe you're going to buy a house with it. Maybe it's going to be well spent. Maybe you're going to do really well and take out $1,000 and spend $1,000, and you're going to have one extra dollar left over and you don't care. But one way or another, the money that you put into that economy is staying in that economy and not coming back out. So it's just a constant machine for glomming on to foreign currencies and holding on to them in their reserves. It's a powerful system, but creates a lot of problems for the local people. So it's not a complete win. It doesn't function to actually make the people of Belize more rich. It doesn't give them more economic power. It actually probably contributes to the really bad inflation issues and the high cost of living issues that they struggle with there. It's a very expensive country for the locals to be able to survive in. So that's a challenge for sure. But when it comes to Nicaragua, we have a completely different picture. That completely open market where anybody can move money in any direction is really uncommon and catches a lot of people off guard how well it works. And that is why so many people are just confused about how easy we're able to do things here in so many cases. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Scott Alan Miller. And as always, share on social media, tell a friend about the show, and I will see all of you tomorrow.